Hey everyone, hey, welcome. Welcome to the stream. My name is Axel from Get Speaking English. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you've been here before. Hello if you're watching this later on YouTube, since I always upload the videos after. Today we are talking about relationships. So that's going to be our topic for the next little while. Our previous topic was the internet, and so we had lots of interesting discussions about that. So now we're going to be looking at relationships, like I said. So the next couple of live lessons are going to be about that. Also, if you're looking for more information, more vocabulary and things about this topic, I have Telegram groups and Instagram accounts where I share lots of information about these topics. So vocabulary posts, reading posts, all sorts of different things. Lots of questions that you can respond to practice your speaking. You'll be able to find all of that there, and we're gonna check this out here as well. So we're back on Facebook today, which is really fantastic. So I will be able to read your comments, so feel free to put a comment in the chat if you would like. Say hi. Also, too, as we are going along, if you have any ideas about how to respond to any of the questions or anything to add, I will be able to take your ideas, add them to my notes as well, and at the end, what I do is I will put everything together, and I'll put everything together, and we will have a fantastic resource that we could use to learn from afterwards. So hi Mariana, welcome. It's great to see you. So let's get right in here then, and people might trickle in, which is great. So just as an FYI, so this lesson is aimed at preparing students for the B2 first and the C1 advanced exams. However, a lot of these phrases, a lot of these words, they're also going to be useful for an IELTS exam, for example, a general English exam, a TOEFL exam, also for anybody who just wants to speak English at an upper intermediate to an advanced level, also even at a proficient level, but really we just want to reach sort of an advanced level. All right, hello, Kinara, so welcome, it's great to see you. All right, perfect. So we have some people who are in fact studying for the exams, so that's really fantastic. So I hope some of this might be useful for you. As you know, we just really have to get comfortable talking about a lot of different topics, right? And be able to converse about them in a way similar to what we can do in our native language. That's ultimately the goal, right? So yeah, so hopefully we'll learn some things here today. So we're gonna focus mostly on vocabulary, I think. So we're gonna brainstorm some key vocabulary, look at some things like that, and then we're going to get in and maybe think of some questions we can practice with, maybe brainstorm some model answers, and then afterwards, as usual, I will edit everything, put it all together, put it up on YouTube, and we will have the notes there as well. And so hopefully that will be a great resource for anybody who's studying. Okay, fantastic. All right, so getting right into it, let's think of some subtopics that might come up when we're thinking about relationships, right? Because I think a lot of people think about relationships as being maybe romantic relationships, right? But I mean, they're really just relationships can be between anything, right? Any people, right? So either between people, between, or even just between, objects and things like that. Beyond just relationships, romantic relationships, right? We can think about friendships, maybe, you know, relationships between our coworkers, our teammates, right? With our extended family. Um, yeah, I am going to be sharing the recording afterwards. I always put it up on YouTube. So I will add it to YouTube afterwards. Probably tomorrow I will get it up. But yeah, that will be online after. Um, yeah, so some subtopics that might come up when we're thinking about this topic. So obviously the different types of relationships. So we can see this little graphic I just pulled really quickly before here. Right? So friendships, of course, you know, being friends with people, what makes a good friend, right? Our families, family relationships, you know, the different family members, our parents, our siblings. So that's a fancy word for, well, not a fancy word, but a way to refer to our brothers and sisters. So siblings, our cousins, romantic relationships, like we said. But, you know, there's also maybe like communication might come up, right? Because communication is really important when it comes to developing relationships, right? How we talk and how we listen to each other in our relationships, right? Potentially trust could come up as well, because you need a certain level of trust when it comes to building a good relationship and having a good relationship, right? So you have to believe that you are safe with the other person and that you can tell them things and that they won't use that information in any way to harm you, right? Maybe boundaries might come up. So when we talk about boundaries, we talk about, this is like limits, right? So knowing what is okay in a relationship, what is not okay in a relationship, right? So we want to make it clear what our boundaries are to make sure that we have a good, healthy relationship, right? Potentially also conflict could be an area coming up that would come up, right? It's common to have a lot of disagreements, right? Disagreements when you are dealing with other people, right? And you have to be able to find solutions to those disagreements. So we would say, you know, to find a solution to a problem, bit of a collocation there, right? So that could be something, right? So any other ideas? If you have any other ideas of subtopics that might come up in the chat, feel free to share them. Or yeah, if you think of anything else that would come up, feel free to share them in the chat. I mean, there's lots of different things that we could think of, you know, maybe like love or support too, like how we support one another. So lots of great ideas. Yeah. So moving right along then. So let's look at, I want to look at collocations. So, and we know that a collocation is what? They're kind of like words that always go together, right? So we wouldn't say, in English, you wouldn't say to lose the bus like you might in some other languages. We would say to miss the bus, right? So those two words always go together. So that's a collocation. We have lots of great collocations that might come up with the word relationship and how we might be able to describe those relationships. So, so one thing, right, like I would think that we could think about how to describe relationships, maybe. For example, here's a good little example. You know, it's important to maintain a professional relationship with your colleagues, right? So we could use this term to refer to any relationship at work basically, right? So we could also refer to, we could say to have like a business relationship or a working relationship with people. So we could use those terms to refer to relationships between people at work. But we could also refer to a relationship as being personal as well. So, and those would be our relationships more with like our friends, maybe our families, our romantic partners. So we'll tend to have professional or working relationships and personal relationships. So, those are some ways that we could describe relationships. And when we're thinking about professional relationships, when we're dealing with our colleagues and coworkers or other people that we might need to work with, our clients, we might describe a lot of those relationships as being cordial. So we say a cordial relationship, or to have a cordial relationship. And that's just basically a relationship that's pretty warm and friendly. It's warm and friendly. You show that you have a level of respect for one another, right? But you don't necessarily know each other really well. You don't go out and have amazing, memorable moments with each other or anything like that. The relationship is a bit cooler, a little bit more distant, but it's cordial. You're very nice to one another, and you aim to be really pleasant to each other. So that's kind of a great way to maybe describe a relationship with your colleagues, your coworkers, people that you have to deal with on a regular basis, but don't maybe do anything you aren't really close to. And if we're talking about conflict, right, we could say here in this example, even when you don't agree with someone, you should always at least aim to have a cordial relationship with them, if at all possible, right? So we want to treat each other still with respect, be nice to one another, be cordial with one another. So cordial relationship. Other positive words we might use to describe a relationship, we could be like a friendly, you could have a friendly or a good or great relationship, right? Those are pretty obvious, I think. Yeah. But going back actually to the idea of having these work relationships, we could also describe a relationship as being strictly professional, like strictly something. So, strictly professional, as in it is only that thing. Like, there's no romance. It's only that thing. So here, kind of an example sentence here. Our relationship is strictly professional. It's only professional. There is nothing going on between us. There's no romance. There's like nothing else. It's strictly professional, So that would be a collocation that we would use. Yeah. So it's strictly professional. We could also say it's purely professional. We could also describe a relationship as being plutonic as well. And that is when you have a good emotional relationship, like you feel very close to one another, but there's no love there, there's no physical intimacy or anything like that. So plutonic, it's more like it's like a friendship, right? A very, very strong friendship. Yeah. So those are some great words that collocate with relationship. Another thing too, we might describe how long the relationship has gone on for. So here in this example, we could see, my parents had a 25-year relationship together. we had a short 3-month relationship. And I just want to point out here, it's 25-year relationship, not 25 years relationship. So whenever we make these, what we call these compound adjectives, we remove the S, right? So if we were to type it out in its full form, for example, a second here, if we could say that we have a friendship of 5 years. So here we have the S. Once we turn it into an adjective, we're going to remove that S. So a friendship of 5 years becomes a 5-year relationship. Similarly, we could use that for ages as well too. The child is 4 years old. That becomes a 4-year-old child. So if you're putting the S's in these kind of adjectives, it's incorrect. So we have to get rid of them. Because that is definitely an error. And that's an error that I hear quite a bit. But yeah, so no S's here. Right. So we could describe the length of a relationship, like I said. So that's a bit of a collocation. And if what is really short, so here, like we said, we have a 3-month relationship, this very short relationship. We could describe this relationship as being fleeting. So anything that's fleeting happens only for a very short period of time. So, if I said that our relationship was very fleeting, that means that it was very brief. It didn't last at all. And the opposite of that could be to have a long-lasting relationship. So another collocation, So we could say that trust is important in building a long-lasting relationship. So that's a very long relationship. The exact opposite from a fleeting relationship. So lots of great collocations with relationships. And so far, we've really only been talking about good relationships, I think, for the most part, right? But obviously not all relationships are positive, right? There are lots of very contentious, very difficult relationships, right? So, for example, we might say that a relationship is doomed. So here, for example, unfortunately, their relationship was doomed from the start. So a doomed relationship, basically one that wasn't meant to last. So doom usually has this it's like a very negative connotation. So if something was doomed, it means that it had no chance of succeeding. We could also describe a relationship as being bitter, maybe. So a bitter relationship. So again, this is a word. This is a relationship where there's lots of intense hostility. So hostility, that's like when you're very aggressive to one another. Yeah, so there's a lot of this intense hostility, resentment, another great word. There's lots of great. Actually, this is a good description with lots of great words. Resentment, that is a feeling of anger. It's kind of like a feeling. It's a combination of anger, of disgust, like you just don't like this person, or this disappointment you might feel because you feel that you've been wronged in some way. So resentment, another great word. And animosity, that is this feeling of like just hatred, pure hatred, bitterness towards someone. Also hostility, yeah. So if you feel animosity towards someone, you really dislike them. Strong, you loathe them almost, right? Yeah. So a bitter relationship would sort of have all of these elements. Yeah. So hostility, resentment, animosity, really bad. And of course, too, obviously, we can just, say, a bad relationship, but also like a failed relationship. So a failed relationship. So just one that never worked out, right? So that could be potentially something. Um, we might talk about, you might hear, they didn't approve of our relationship. So, that is something, do you approve of our relationship? They don't approve of the relationship. My family doesn't approve of my partner, right? So, do they like it or not, basically? Do they feel that they're good, right? So we might say that. So we might say that people, for example, family, friends, parents, coworkers, right? They don't approve of a relationship, so they don't think it's a good idea, right? So another great collocation, if they think that it's good or not. And if, say, for example, so still focusing on bad relationships, we could say that a relationship, say, for example, you've been married for a while, but it's been very, very difficult. We might describe that as the relationship is on the rocks. So another great way that we might describe it. So here, for example, my relationship with my husband has been on the rocks for a while now. So that means that there's been a lot of hardship, a lot of problems. Possible that it's about time for a divorce, unfortunately. So yeah, so we might so if you hear that a relationship has been on the rocks, that means that there's been a lot of challenges and it's been very, very, very difficult for quite a while. Yeah, so can you guys think of any other collocations that might come up for relationship? Feel free to add your ideas as well. I've had there are so many different ways that you can describe relationships, and there's so many different relationships out there too. I've been mostly focusing here on relationships between people, right? But, you could also think about the relationship between various concepts, ideas, really anything that's like there's a connection as a relationship, right? There's also different types of relationships as well too, right? You could talk about like the relationship between, doctors and patients, for example. So the doctor-patient relationship has to remain confidential, right? That sort of thing, right? Or maybe the relationship between teachers and students, right? Or maybe the parent-child relationship, right? So that would be about the relationship between a child and their parents, right? So again, lots of great words. A lot of great collocations with this. All right. So now that we have some ideas, let's focus a bit on the sort of exam style questions. And I'm glad that you find these useful. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that these lessons are really interesting as well, for sure. So part one, so just as a quick reminder, right, when we do the B2 first and the C1 advanced exam, these exams are done with another candidate, so there'll be at least one, possibly two, but usually one other candidate in the room, and then there are two examiners. One is going to be asking the question, the other one is going to be sort of evaluating, taking notes. And the speaking part is divided into 4 parts. The first part is basically just one-on-one sort of interview questions. In the other parts of the exam, there will be some interaction between you and the other candidate, but that does not happen in this part of the exam. So these are just sort of warm-up questions. The examinator is going to be asking you just some simple-ish questions. They're designed to get you to warm up, and they're usually focused on you, your experiences, your opinions, that sort of thing. So, so thinking about that in mind, these sort of personal questions, I want to focus on questions about relationships, but also questions about the past. So we're going to focus on the past today. Because these questions, they get you to ask about your experiences, your opinions, those sort of things, but they also use a range of tenses as well. So it's very common for them to ask you about, preferences, things that you do all the time. So you're using, simple present, that sort of thing. Common for them to ask you what you intend to do in the future, so to get you talking in the future. And then also, asking you about your past. So since we're doing relationships, let's think about some questions to practice with that are about relationships, but also that ask about, past relationships. So let's think about past relationships. And let's brainstorm maybe a couple questions that we can practice with, and then at the end, we'll look at a couple sort of in detail. But yeah, let's think of some like B2 first style questions. I can't type today. That's fine. It's very early here. So if we could think of some sort of like easier sort of, easier questions to get you thinking about yourself, your relationship. Maybe a really basic, obvious question could be something like, who was your best friend when you were little? Right? So who was your best friend when you were little? And if we're little. That's just a very common way to say when you were young, right? Like when you were like a child, basically, right? So, that could be something, right? So who was your best friend when you were little? Or maybe, who was your favorite teacher in school? So if you have an idea as well, feel free to throw them out. So we have a little bit of a bank of questions that we could use to practice with, that focus on the past. Maybe when is the last time you saw someone? So for example, when's the last time you saw an aunt or uncle, maybe? I don't know, when's the last time you saw your grandparents, or when's the last time you spent time with your family? Something like that. So that would force you also to think about the past, right? If we get away from family relationships, maybe something like, what was your first boss like? Or what was your boss like at your first job, right? So that would also kind of get us thinking about the past, right? Like, oh, like what was it like in that moment? What was that guy like? maybe too, right? Like, um, sometimes these questions get you to think about a preference, right? So maybe, when you were a child, did you prefer playing with your friends or spending time with your family? Like, I don't know. But like an either or question, right? Like, did you prefer doing this or did you prefer doing that? Notice also the verb form here, right? Like, so when you were a child, did you prefer playing with your friends or prefer spending time with your family? So prefer the ing form of the verb. Or we could say prefer to the base form, right? Basically prefer like the infinite form, right? So either of those, like I preferred to play with my friends, or I preferred spending time with my family. So, note how this corresponds. Like, I've used the same verb choice here. So, preferred playing, and I preferred spending time with your family. And we never mix these. So, sometimes I hear people saying things like, I preferred to playing. No. Or I preferred spend time. Like, no. It's like, what or the other? So I preferred to play with my friends, or I preferred spending time with my family. And the difference between these choices is there's not a huge difference. So in this case, both of these have pretty much the same meaning. And there's a couple other verbs that work like this as well, right? Like to love, I love doing something, I love to do something, I like doing something, I like to do something. And then there are others that are only followed by ing form, right? So we have to remember those, especially at that C1 level. These are the kind of details we need to be remembering, right? So C1's all about the little details. Anyways, so lots of great questions that we could practice with here to get us thinking about the past. Let's step it up a notch a little bit. Let's think of some C1 questions. So obviously B2 questions are going to be a little bit easier. C1 advanced style questions, the language is going to be a little bit more advanced. Maybe the questions too are not necessarily about like you and your personal preferences, but maybe about how things are in your city, your society, those sort of things, right? So let's maybe think of a couple questions again that are going to make us think in the past, right? Maybe like how did you and your childhood friends resolve, disagreements when you were younger? Like, that's kind of interesting. So how did you solve problems? Or what steps did you take to solve those problems, right? Or, maybe, what can you, or something that's gonna make you think about something like sort of a moment, right? Maybe can you describe a memorable vacation you took with your family? And obviously, so memorable, something that you will remember forever or for a very, very, very long time. Good word. Also, I just want to go back here too. I said resolve disagreement. So another great collocation. We love collocations in English. They're really important, especially for these exams. They love when you know what words collocate. So we would say to resolve a disagreement, or resolve problems. Great words. Maybe like, who is your role model? growing up, and how did they influence you? So growing up, so to grow up, so that stage when you like go from like being small to big, right? And role model, somebody who really you view in a very like you want to be like them, you want to behave like them, so you view them in a very positive way. Those people are your role models, right? So lots of couple different ideas. So let's maybe take a couple of these. Let's take a couple of these and maybe think of some model answers, maybe learn a couple more new words, and then I have to run. So let's go with this one first. And feel free to add an idea in the chat. So when we're thinking about this part of the exam, so just like before we begin, we don't have a lot of time to respond to these questions. So about like maybe 15, maybe 20 seconds maximum you have to respond. So you really only have enough time to answer the question directly, and then add an additional detail. So we do always want to expand. We do always want to expand in our answers. So either by giving, a reason or an example, like that's a nice way to do it. You don't have time to say too much. So I know sometimes we really want to just, show that we're capable of speaking and just like keep going. But on C1 Advanced and B2 first, we don't really have a lot of time. So we're going to keep these pretty simple, but we do want to elaborate a little bit. We don't want to just do one word answers, right? So that in mind, so who was your favorite teacher in school? Well, here's sort of an idea. My favorite my favorite teacher in school was Mrs. Lee. She was always helpful and explained things very well. And I liked how she made learning fun, right? So this was not very long at all, right? And of course, too, depending on your level of fluency, you're going to be able to say a little bit more or a little bit less, right? But we really just want to be able to answer and then give a reason. Yeah, so this is fine, right? So we have our answered it directly, and then just sort of expanded a little bit. Yeah, so sort of another example. So I'd say Mr. Patel was my favorite teacher. He was really funny and made us feel comfortable in class. So I always enjoyed his lessons. So if we feel comfortable, that means in this case, if we feel comfortable, we feel at ease and we feel, not stressed, kind of enjoy ourselves. Yeah, so that's what this here means in this context. Oh yeah, I feel really comfortable when I'm in that place. I just feel, I feel nice, right? And I also want to talk about this really quickly. So he's really funny and he made us feel comfortable in class. Versus I liked how she made learning fun. Because sometimes I hear people confuse these. So if something is fun, that is something that you enjoy. So something fun is something that you like to do. It's something that you enjoy. Whereas something that is funny, it makes you laugh. So it's like, ha ha ha, the comic or the comedian is funny. So that makes you laugh a lot. So things that are fun are not necessarily funny, but they could just be something that you liked and was enjoyable, whereas something funny typically makes you laugh a lot. So watch out for that one, because I hear people confusing those two things. Another quick little example for this one. So I really liked my 8th grade teacher, Ms. Taylor. She was super passionate about science. It made doing experiments super exciting. I always looked forward to having her class. So for super passionate about something, if I'm super passionate about something, you really like it, but you show a lot of emotion or a lot of feelings about that thing. So in this case, you show this person shows a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions about science because they really enjoy it, they really love it. So that's what it means to be passionate about something. And another thing here too. So I always looked forward to having her class. So now previously I talked about the verb form after prefer. So here you can say look forward to having her class. So similarly here we say to look forward to doing something or to look forward to something. So it's really important that we get that verb form correct here. Yeah, so super important to remember those details. And while we're on the topic as well too, because I know that there's like Ms., Mr., Mrs. So I just want to, just so there's no question here. So this is like Mrs. So Mrs. Lee. So this is a title for somebody who's married or widowed, sort of like an older woman. Here, Ms. Taylor. This is a title. This is probably the most commonly used title when it comes to addressing women, because it doesn't indicate their marriage status. So if you don't know how to address someone, you can just call them Ms. and that's fine. So like Ms. Taylor, that's like the safest way to address somebody. And then we also have Miss. We can say, like Miss, I don't know, Johnson, for example. This would be for like a young, unmarried woman. But this is probably the most common way to address someone. So yeah, so Mrs., Ms., and Miss for women. And of course, we also have, I saw Mr. here for a male. Yeah. So lots of little details to talk about in here. And let's look at one more really quickly. Let's talk about our role models maybe really quickly. So who was your role model growing up? And how did they influence you? So again, I know we mentioned really earlier, so that role model, that is somebody who you see as an example. They're sort of like who you want to be. You admire their behavior, you want to emulate it, you want to copy it. So that is your role model. Yeah. So, and this might be tricky to respond to. I think that I would have a hard time responding to this, and that's completely okay. You may not necessarily always know the answer to a question. You do have to answer the questions. You can't just ask for a different question. But if something is hard for you to respond to, you can admit that. The point of these questions is to get you talking. So you don't necessarily always have to have an answer. A good answer, I should say. You don't necessarily always have to have a good answer. And maybe we could talk about ways to get through difficult questions in another lesson. Because there's a couple ways you could approach it. But yeah, here, let's do this role model. So, I feel like a sibling might be a good way, you know, maybe my role model growing up was my older brother. You know, he always worked hard and was kind to everyone. His determination and kindness taught me the importance of perseverance and compassion. So here's some interesting words here that I wanted to talk about. So determination. So determination, this is basically your ability, your ability to do something even when it's hard. You'll talk about being determined. So when you feel like you really, really, really want to do something. So here, determination is kind of basically that quality. So it's like that ability to do something even when it's really, really challenging, even when you want to give it up, or even when you want to give up, that's determination. So if you're determined to do something, you have good determination. So his determination and kindness taught me the importance of perseverance. So another great word. So again, too, like, so to persevere, that would be the verb form. That means, again, to like continually make effort, even when it's really, really, really difficult. And then perseverance is that quality. So, you know, the effort, the continued effort to do something, even if it's really hard, even if it takes a really, really, really long time. I like to think that I have really good perseverance because we've been doing like these topics for so long and things now. And I also know that studying a language takes a lot of perseverance. It takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of dedication, right? Especially when you get to those high levels. Yeah, so great word to describe this quality, perseverance. And what was the other one? Yeah, so his determination and kindness taught me the importance of perseverance and compassion. Compassion, another great word. So compassion is that feeling. It's like when you feel like you have sympathy or maybe sadness because something bad happened to somebody else. So it didn't happen to you specifically, but you can put yourself in their shoes, to put yourself into someone else's shoes. That means that you can kind of imagine yourself in that situation and think about how they would feel. So if you feel compassion for others, you have those feelings, you know, you care about them, you feel sadness if something bad happens, and you just kind of, I don't know, you kind of worry about them, right? So compassion is a great word. And if you are compassionate, so here that's just the like that adjective form. So compassion is basically that quality, and here it is using it as an adjective. Yeah, so great words. I'm gonna look at one more example, I think. So here's another idea. So I looked up to my aunt as a role model. She was a successful businesswoman, but she also made time for her family and community. She inspired me to pursue my goals and be ambitious while also making time for the people I care about. Yeah. So great collocation here, to pursue a goal. So if you don't know, to pursue something actually means to follow something. Like you might hear about, you know, the cops were pursuing the perpetrator, the criminal, something like that. So they were following them. But here we would say to pursue a goal, or maybe to pursue a career. So just basically to like follow through and do those things. So another great collocation that we would say. And if you are ambitious, that is having that very strong will to basically be successful, right? You want to be successful, maybe rich or powerful, like all of those sort of fantastic traits, right? So, yeah, to be ambitious, and, ambition is that quality. If we want to think of the noun form, so to be ambitious, yeah, that's that trait. And then ambition is the qualities. Like we would say you have ambition. To have ambition, that would be the collocation. To have ambitions. I have really good, high ambitions. Or lofty ambitions. I don't know. And also here too, I wanted to point out here, if we say, she inspired me to pursue my goals and be ambitious while also making time for the people I care about. So another kind of great little collocation here. If you make time for something, you basically find time to do that thing in your schedule, right? So it can be really, really, really hard to see your friends, see your family, maybe get exercise, things like that. If you have a really busy job or just like life, right? Life gets really crazy. So we usually have to make the time. We have to make time for the important things in our lives, right? So to make sure that those things are not neglected. Yeah. So if we make time to do something, or make time for something, we have to put that into our schedule. Schedule the time. Yeah. So great words here. One little final note, so all of these questions were about the past. We're talking about the past. I kind of want to point out how these are answered. So, because some of these things are still valid today. Like, for example, I looked up to my aunt as a role model. She was a successful businesswoman. Maybe she's still a successful businesswoman today, right? Same with the brother, right? My role model growing up was my brother. He always worked hard and was kind to everyone. Maybe that's still true today. And you could switch to present tense, right? So we could say my role model growing up was my brother. He always works hard and was kind to everyone. And I hear people doing that. But our tendency in English is when we're talking about the past to put it in the past. And that's probably the easiest way to approach it. And it's a lot less confusing than switching tenses. Sometimes I hear students doing that, like they'll be talking about the past, but then suddenly they will switch to the present, and it can be really confusing to the listener. So I always recommend, if you're talking about the past, just put it all in the past. So if maybe we're talking about a vacation, like, oh, I went to Italy 8 months ago, and it was really beautiful there. There were lots of restaurants and things like that. Like, I would still put everything in the past, even if it's still probably true today. So be kind of mindful of that. If we are talking about the past, make sure everything is in the past, and because you're gonna sound the most natural that way, I would say. So that's definitely what I recommend. So if you're talking about the past, put it in the past. Don't try to switch up the tenses. Don't try to go from past to present, things like that. Yeah, because usually it can be tricky to follow what you're saying. So that would be my final piece of advice. Yes. So if we're talking about the past, put it in the past. All of it in the past. Yeah. So, yes. So that's my final word of advice. Okay. Anyways, I am done. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out. It was great to see you all here. I hope that this was a bit helpful. Feel free to, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to send me a message or anything like that. Again, I'm going to put this video and these notes up on YouTube so we can refer to them afterwards. We are going to have another live lesson next week. It's going to be focused on part 2 of the speaking paper of the B2 first and the C1 advanced exam. So we're going to be looking at an image activity. We're going to be doing that. Then on the 25th, there's going to be no lesson. And then part 3 and part 4 in May. So that'll be really fantastic. And all of these are happening at 1300 UTC here on Facebook Live. All right, perfect. Oh yeah, so the name of the YouTube channel is Get Speaking English. So, and I think, I don't have the slide here, but I am going to, at the end of this video, I'm going to switch to my ending screen, and it's going to be up there as well. So, and if I remember, though, I will share it to Facebook as well. I'm better at sharing things to the Telegram group than I am to the Facebook group, unfortunately, or the Facebook page, rather, just because I'm more usually on Telegram all the time, and I'm not always on Facebook. But yeah, I will try to add it there, so you can check it out there. Yeah, and then of course, obviously, we'll be back here on Facebook next time. All right. Okay, perfect. So, yeah. So thanks, everybody. And I will see you all next time. All right. Have a good one, guys.